Wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media is largely ignoring, and also the alternative media are ignoring Israel's massive land grab of Syria right now. If you're talking about what's going on in Syria and you're not talking about what Israel is involved with, then you're lying to your audience. And now the U.S. State Department is falling lockstep with Israel to allow them to take as much land as they'd like. Also, the rebranding of the Al-Qaeda terrorists, which are now running that country. It's like they're going to remove them from the terrorist watch list.
Right.
This is how you rebrand people. Oh, he was a terrorist. There's a $10 million bounty on his head. Well, what if we just remove the bounty and label him a good guy?
Right.
Will that work?
I'd like to talk to some Afghani vets who fought Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and now we're celebrating them being in charge in Syria. How does that feel to those veterans? We're also going to talk about the UnitedHealthcare CEO shooter, what we know about it, and more importantly, what we don't know about him. It's the weirdest story, right? Can we just agree on that?
Yeah.
This is weird.
More weird things keep coming out about this guy, too.
Yeah, very strange. And we're going to take a look at who is his lawyer, because that's interesting. Also, we could lose access to TikTok within a few weeks. This is not just about fun dance trends. This is about actually the United States government and the president having the ability to, remove a website, an app, if they don't like what we're seeing. We may now go to the Supreme Court, and we're going to talk to a journalist about that coming up.
Also, we're going to talk to a journalist about what's going on in Guatemala. Why is Guatemala the largest provider of children in the child trafficking operation in the world? The United States working hand in hand with Guatemala to traffic children up across the border into the United States. It's all being done at the highest levels of the U.S. government, and we're going to break that story wide open today on the show. So welcome in. Let us know where you're joining us from on this Tuesday. We're live.
This comment
here.
says, Clayton, take your shirt off. That's not what we do here.
Take my shirt off.
We don't do that. No. We're going to talk about...
It's cold. We got a snowstorm this morning. Kids were delayed school today.
I mean, I know he's a beefcake, but this is my husband. You don't talk to him that way. He's going to stay clothed. This is a family show, folks.
First word that comes to mind is beefcake when you look at me.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah. We're going to also take a look at the beefcakedness of the...
Yeah. That's how I describe you when my friends ask, so what's Clayton like? Oh, beefcake, total beefcake.
He's a beefcake.
That's the first thing that comes to mind. Hey, let us know where you're joining us from around the world. Littleton, Colorado, Holly K says, hello to Littleton. Nice to see you. Let us know. Florida, nice to see you. It's nice in Florida down there. Someone says fruitcake. No, now I take umbrage.
He's no kind of cake. He's not a cake for you either.
Okay, we are streaming live on Rumble, on X, on YouTube simultaneously. So good to see all of you today. All right, let's get into the news, shall we?
Well, we will do that. But first, we want to tell you that Redacted is sponsored by Indeed, which is the #1 hiring platform that you need to check out if you are seeking a job or looking for a job applicant. Because if you need to hire, you need Indeed. They're your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to their own data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast so you don't have to search through the black hole of submitted resumes. Instead, they can use their smart technology to find a quality candidate that matches exactly what you're looking for. So ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. They don't just help you hire faster. In fact, 93% of employers agree that they deliver the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to recent Indeed surveys. So check them out, and you can get a $75 sponsored job credit when you go to Indeed.com/redacted. Let them know that you support them supporting independent media. One more time, head on over to Indeed.com/redacted.
Well, and just like that, the United States is trying to rewrite history in Syria. This didn't take long. Praising Israel for invading the country, claiming that Israel has a right to invade and occupy wide swaths of southern Syria in perpetuity. Take it as long as you want. Oh, infinity? Infinity times 10? You can have it. The United States government and Mockingbird Media are right now also hiding the fact that Al-Qaeda terrorists are, of course, running that country and killing Christians as we speak in Syria. Where's the outrage on mainstream media about this? There's silence, of course. Why are the mainstream media silent about the killing of Christians by these terrorists? Well, I'll give you 3 guesses. Because it would undermine their fake narrative that Assad was a brutal dictator that gassed his own people. A story, of course, created by the Obama administration and debunked widely. Anyone with a brain can look at the research and show how widely debunked that is. Thomas Massie, just a few minutes ago, posting this. I have been actively opposed to the U.S. policy, the Obama, Clinton, Kerry, Biden policy of destabilizing the government of Syria for as long as I have been in Congress. Please pray for the Syrian Christians who have survived our meddling up to this point. Look at the timeline on that. Washington, D.C., June 27, 2013. Congressman Massie introduced a bill to block unauthorized use of military aid to Syrian rebels, a.k.a. Al-Qaeda, at the time. He was one of the few. Congressman Gates, another one. By the way, Congressman Massey is going to be joining us on the show tomorrow to dive more deeply into this. You can talk about all of these Christians being trafficked, attacked, because it would also undermine the goal of Israel. Just like you don't hear anything about the plight of Christians in Gaza who were killed. Tucker covered it. We covered it here on their show, but it's really about it. There's not been any coverage of it. There's no care of these Christians that are being slaughtered there because it totally undermines the story, doesn't it? And here is now the rebranding of these terrorists this morning. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. is considering removing the al-Qaeda offshoot Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, from the list of U.S. designated terror organizations. Isn't this amazing? After the group led the offensive that ousted former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The Washington Post reports that U.S. officials are in contact with HTS and other groups involved in the offensive. One U.S. official said the Biden administration was doing a real-time assessment on whether or not HTS should be removed from the list of foreign terrorist organizations. According to Politico, there's a furious debate among U.S. officials about the issue. Quote, there's a huge scramble to see if and how and when we can delist HTS, one official said. By the way, HTS's leader, Abu Mohammed al-Jilani, also has a $10 million bounty on his head from the United States. And they're debating the merit of whether or not they should be on a terrorist watch list. They're killing Christians as we speak.
I mean, this is an interesting story, but it's not a new one. We know that the SBU is a terrorist organization in Ukraine. They've been on the State Department's watch list for decades, but they're the good nut guys when we decide we need to use them to fight Russia. Okay. Same thing. We fought al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and then armed them in Syria in order to overthrow the government. This has been a decades-long project, and finally it came to fruition. Yay. Let's see. Who else? Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. We like him when we want to have oil, but we do have a current Justice Department indictment out for him. So it's like I don't know. It's like the worst popular kid in class who's like using people to do their homework when they need it and then fighting them when they need. This is an old story. This is not new. Where it's happening. Oh, Obama deciding that these terrorists were moderates, right? It only happens because we let them. If we don't pay attention.
Well, I go back to what Thomas Massie was saying earlier, which is voted against giving any of this aid and support to these quote unquote rebels and the slaughtering of these Christians. Like, that's exactly what's happening here. I love the idea, though, that the Biden administration is doing a real time assessment on whether or not to take them off the list. Like, there are terrorists, but we're really debating internally right now. I hope someone asks Corinne Jean-Pierre at the White House press briefing, like, what exactly are you doing to decide to take these terrorists off a freaking watch list?
So they behead people, like Kevork Almassian said on our show. They boil the heads. We're cool with that now. That's cool because we just didn't. Yeah, well, that's
because we're doing Israel's bidding. Go ahead, Philip. Sorry.
That's like one of those. That's one of those lists that you shouldn't be able to get removed from. That'd be like the mass murder list. Can they just be like, you know what? We've gone back. We've decided Pol Pot didn't kill all those people. You know, like seriously, like once you're on that list, you should be on that list.
It's not a moving target. You're right. Yeah.
Calvin Johnstone in our chat says, hey, Redacted, please explain to me the point of the United Nations while this is happening. I don't know. Good question in our chat room, Calvin. I have no freaking idea because you actually got ahead of me here, Calvin, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about now is the United Nations and what was put in place in 1974 by the United Nations.
Did you
on
know
the
that
Golan
Jehovah's
Heights.
Witnesses call them the many-headed beasts? Like
Who?
they are literally from Revelations, the United Nations, because of their like this sort of apocalyptic organization.
I don't
Did
doubt
you
it.
know that? Okay, we'll go there another time.
So the main piece of this is Israel, of course. You cannot talk about Syria without talking about Israel. You're lying to your audience, by the way, if you're keeping that part out of it. All you needed to do was watch mainstream media yesterday. I don't care if you were watching MSNBC. I don't care if you were watching Fox. I don't care if you were watching any of the legacy media yesterday. They all conveniently leave out the part of the story where Israel is involved in it. It's unbelievable, the massive land grab. So get this, warmonger in chief, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there he is, who basically runs the United States government, of course. Netanyahu has announced that the 1974 Separation of Forces Agreement between Israel and Syria is no longer valid because now Assad is gone. It's done. It's finished. So just so you understand where the Golan Heights are and where they're now, which was originally brokered by the United Nations, was meant to prevent military activity in the Golan Heights buffer zone. You're not allowed to be there. A region recognized internationally as Syria, but occupied illegally, of course, by Israel since 1967. Israel does a lot of illegal occupying. That's like their favorite hobby. They're good at that. Netanyahu argues that with Bashar al-Assad no longer in power, of course, Syria has no legitimate government. So therefore, meaning prior agreements with Damascus don't hold any water anymore. So based on that logic, Israel is now justifying airstrikes on Syrian airfields. They destroyed basically all of their jets yesterday, destroyed all of their airfields yesterday. They're like, hey, well, Biden's half dead and no one's paying attention and Assad just went to Mexico. I got an idea, Netanyahu says, let's just bomb everything. Destroy all of the military capabilities of Syria have left. Done, gone, exploded. They hit their strategic ports. They hit their airports. They also then expanded their territorial hold and got to high ground areas in the Golan Heights. So now they have aimed down into these valley areas as well, all in the name of protecting national security. Here's the headline. U.S. repeats Israel's right to defend itself after seizure of buffer zone with Syria. I love they call it a buffer zone. No, that's the Golan Heights, which is Syria. But it's a buffer zone, right? So when Netanyahu was asked yesterday how long you plan to occupy illegally the Golan Heights in Syria, he basically said indefinitely. I think or is that the word he used, or
he
forever?
He used for eternity.
Oh, for eternity.
Right.
Okay, so there's no ambiguity there. We will occupy Syria for eternity, is what he said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Forever.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Forever. If you're a fan of Sandlot, you know what that is.
The United States has already thrown its support behind this move. Calling Israel's action a necessary step to ensure stability in this volatile region. Of course, we need to support Israel in their takeover of this land. It's clear. It's a clear show of alignment, of course, between Washington and Israel. The U.S. State Department said on Monday that Israel was acting in self-defense when its military invaded Syrian territory beyond the demilitarized buffer zone and went in beyond that area that it agreed upon in the United Nations, following the removal of Bashar al-Assad and by the government and by these Syrian rebels. So now at the State Department, this is amazing. Okay, so you know the ICC, right? The International Criminal Court has labeled Netanyahu a war criminal, right? And should be brought up on war crimes, a war crimes tribunal, right? And then, of course, the U.S. State Department, Matt Miller was like, no, we don't agree with that at all. Netanyahu's a great guy. You guys might consider him a war criminal at the ICC, but we don't. We love the guy. But now there's questions about whether Assad should be brought up by the ICC. And would the U.S. State Department support that? Would Syrian people want Assad brought up by the ICC? And I love this hypocrisy at the State Department. Watch these reporters who have just had enough of the double talk and the lies by the United States State Department. Watch.
The president said yesterday that the Assad regime, or Assad himself, should be held accountable. Will you support his application to stand in front of the ICC as a war criminal who committed crimes against humanity?
So we support the work of the ICC. I know that obviously we have disagreed with their there. Hold on. I'm gonna let me address it.
You support the work of the ICC until they do something about it.
So we have had a lot.
They're laughing at him.
Yeah.
You know what, Matt? Let me answer the question, because I was addressing that before you interrupted me. We obviously have had a jurisdictional dispute with them, as it relates to cases against Israel. That is a long-standing jurisdictional dispute. But
So
that
against
said,
Israel-
we also made clear that we.
So, and the reporters jump in. They're like, "Oh, okay. So when it's with Netanyahu, you have a problem with it, but now," and and everyone just laughed in the room because the jig is up. These guys are absolute criminals in the State Department.
But good for that press corps for not falling for that. They cannot sit there while he says such nonsense.
No, reporters at
They're
the State
paying
Department.
attention.
These reporters at the State Department, probably some of the better reporters. They're actually asking tough questions. They're sick and tired of the lies and the hypocrisy of the Biden administration when it comes to all of these wars and these warmongering ways. Here is watch Matt Miller be attacked specifically around the idea of genocide. And then the United States is openly supporting the land grab in Syria, genocide in Gaza. That's exactly what the United States has been doing. Watch.
Meanwhile, this administration has financed a genocide in Gaza for the last year, and every day you're up there denying accountability for it. So, I mean, what gives you the right to lecture other countries on their moral?
So if you have a policy question for me, I'm happy to take it. If you want to give a speech.
That's it. That is a policy question.
Where you can give a speech.
Yeah, but people are sick of the bullshit in here. I mean, it is a genocide. You are abetting it, and you are risking nuclear war in Ukraine for this proxy war.
Plenty of other places to give a speech. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration in Israel.
Yeah.
That's not like he was making a speech. It sounded like he was asking a question, which is kind of like a reporter's job, but whatever.
Right.
Yeah, why are you supporting this? Why are you supporting this?
And that was a few weeks ago, that altercation. But Matt Miller just today said, well, why do we support Israel taking over this territory when most Arab countries are decrying it? Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. And he says, well, it's within context. It's contextual, right? He did not supply said context.
Trisha in our chat says there is no genocide in Gaza. Maybe you can get into detail. I mean, Amnesty International just labeled it a genocide. I mean, it's arguably either that or an ethnic cleansing. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but genocide, ethnic cleansing.
Are you more comfortable with collective punishment? We're punishing civilians and children for the role of their government.
Yeah.
Is that cool? That's cool by you? If it's not, it's genocide light?
I love that you can't ever criticize it. It's amazing to me. We criticize the United States all the time on the show. This is what we do on this show, is hold our government to account. But when it comes to Israel, it's hands off. You can't. These guys are amazing. You can't talk. You can't talk at all about why. First of all, my position is, why the hell is the United States supporting this and the supporting of slaughtering of Christians in Syria right now? To
and
help
Jews,
Israel.
the Jews will also,
and Jews as well,
yeah.
Right? But you can't talk about that at all because it's just unbelievable to me.
Do you think Jews will be safe in Syria?
Right?
Do you?
Okay, yeah, exactly, sure. In fact, they've been shouting in the streets about killing the Jews. So you want to talk about that? You can't talk about that. You can't talk about that. It undermines their narrative right now. So just shut up. Go along like sheep if you want to, but not on this show. So if you want sheep, turn on CNN, turn on any of the other Mockingbird media that's literally going to hide this big part of the story. Ignore it. Anyway, meanwhile,
last night I asked Clayton to turn on Rachel Maddow because I just wanted to see what the legacy media was saying about this. And she literally was celebrating this as if it was an extension of the Arab Spring that started in Egypt in 2011. And I just was waiting. I was clicking my nails on. And I said, do you think they're going to mention the fact that Al-Qaeda is in charge there? Do you think they'll mention? No mention of it. It was a full-on celebration of this new regime.
No talking about Christians being killed.
And I threw a pillow and went to bed.
The videos are awful. If you want to watch the videos of Christians being rounded up right now, you can certainly see that, but there's no mention of it on MSNBC last night.
Yeah, this is a real moment of democracy in Syria, according to Rachel Maddow. I could not believe it. And okay, buy that if you want to.
All right. Anyway, meanwhile, the Biden administration and Israel are trying to rebrand these terrorists now, which is amazing to me. So the U.S. is considering removing this, and as I mentioned before, now in contact with HTS and other groups. So the Washington Post is saying, like, the Biden administration is talking with them and like communicating with these terrorists that we have a $10 million bounty on the head of their leader. But now we're friends. That's how this works in Washington, D.C.
What to do about that? What to do?
So many questions.
Well, the suspected shooter of the UnitedHealthcare chief executive, Brian Thompson, is named Luigi Mangiano. He showed up at his hearing today, and here is what he yelled to the press. See if you can make it out, and then we'll discuss it if you can't quite catch it.
Completely out of touch. And it insults the intelligence of the American people and lived experience.
Okay, so what he says is this is extremely unjust and an insult to the American people and their experience. So he was at court today to fight whether or not he would be extradited to the state of New York, where the alleged murder took place, because he was found in Pennsylvania. He's going to fight it, which could take at least a month because he does not want to be extradited to New York. He now has an attorney. It wasn't clear if this was court appointed or if it was retained, although we do know he comes from a privileged family. So it's likely that his family retained this attorney, but we don't know that yet. Here's what we do know about his attorney, Thomas Dickey. Take a look at this. Is from the attorney's website. If you just look him up with the name Altoona, Pennsylvania, you find him quite easily. A couple of things to note here. He is, quote, one of the few death penalty qualified attorneys in the area. What does that tell you? Interesting, right? He's known to have made many successful cases in Pennsylvania and providing vigorous defense against all levels of criminal charges and active representation in civil litigation. He's also a regular commentator on CNN. When he was in court for this hearing, Mangione continued to yell a bunch of stuff, and his attorney came in and he said, you need to pipe down. You keep your mouth shut, because this is how we play this now. Now, Mangione yesterday was found reportedly eating at McDonald's. They say he was eating hash browns. And because he is somewhat of a vigilante hero to some, that McDonald's is now being hit with a slew of bad reviews saying, don't stop here. If you're an American hero, they'll sell you out. They also have many puns in reviews now about rats in the kitchen. You know what I mean? The cashier ratted out Mangione, that kind of thing. And Google has been removing those because this Google spokesperson said these violate our policies and we're removing them. Now, this story is full of oddities. It's like a bad, one user said online, a bad Scooby-Doo episode where you just have not an experienced criminal, right? Like you rip because okay, let's go through some of the holes that we have. He's an Ivy League graduate with a high IQ and left this trail of clues like Hansel and Gretel. There's some odd connection between his family connections and DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas by only 1 degree of separation, according to his Facebook profile. Is that something? Or is it nothing? Will those connections actually get him a better defense? We don't know, right? He left the scene of the crime on a traceable e-bike, was found at McDonald's with a fake ID, reportedly carrying, I don't know if it's the murder weapon or a murder weapon, having written a whole anti-capitalist manifesto against the American healthcare system. And he's model handsome, of course. So that's prompting this sort of unhealthy online fandom, such as this, I can fix him. You know what I mean, ladies? Like, yeah, he's a bad dude, but he's worth it. Girls, no.
He's only a murderer. I can fix it. It's not
he's
like
an alleged murderer at this point.
Okay, but it's not like alleged murder. But it's not like he's leaving his dishes in the sink. You know,
or crackers and crumb crackers in the bed.
Yeah, like that's not the offense here.
Right.
Or he's leaving his clothes on the floor.
The Daily Mail reports that he had a bad back injury that prevented him from having sex. That's a strange thing to say that his roommate said. Okay, if his back injury is so bad, how does he lift weights in order to look like this and hike around what's presumably a Hawaii? I think that if you can lift weights to this extent and hike, you probably can find a way to have a little sex if you're motivated enough. So that doesn't...
Am I right?
Am I right? Beef kick, Clayton? You want to read in on that? Clayton finds a way. So yeah, I don't know. And also because he's from such a healthy family, normally wealthy families find a way to pay for health care. It just all seems like something's not quite right. And a friend of his posted this yesterday saying he's not a monster. The story is all upside down. I mean, I'm inclined to believe that we just don't have all the details and that there's something not right side up about this. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is warning now against celebrating the killing and idolizing him as a hero. We celebrate no death on this show. Absolutely. But I think that kind of rings hollow from Josh Shapiro for saying, let's not idolize death, given that he signed missiles to Ukraine for the killing of Russians. So that guy can pound sand. So let me know what you think. Again, there's just, it continues to sound like just that's not quite right. Was it just someone who was doing this badly? Why would he do it? Why this guy, high connected? Go ahead. Also
his eye. Have you noticed like the close-ups in the photos and the surveillance photos of his eyebrows? Like they look different. I mean, so now we have this guy whose eyebrows are clearly like closer together. It almost reminds me of all of like the Biden photos, like when they show Biden's earlobes that are attached, but President Biden's earlobes aren't attached. Like, who are these people? Is this legitimately him? We don't know at this point.
Right. I did see, this did make me laugh. I saw a meme yesterday that said, now we're going to find out if Italians are white based on how he's treated, because we don't get a lot of high profile Italian perps. So here we go. I mean, we haven't since, the 20s, the mobsters and things like that.
By the way, are people actually, when they go to McDonald's, do they look up reviews before they decide, like on a restaurant? They looking up
time.
Like they know.
I only go to 5-star McDonald's. Four is the least I will go to.
Honey, check that Yelp review of McDonald's. But you know what you're going to get. Who's like they think they're going to comment, bomb Google reviews of McDonald's? Okay. We've got a lot more news to get to here. How many of you are concerned that your privacy is being invaded? Liberal globalists are invading individuals' private messages, targeting them based on their political affiliation. Our friend Tucker Carlson, of course, had that exact thing happen to him. And that's why we partnered with Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that, like us, believes privacy is your fundamental human right. Freedom Chat offers true end-to-end encryption, ensuring that your messages can only be read by the intended recipient. Built-in screenshot protection, so no one can screenshot your conversations. The storage of the message on their servers doesn't exist. No commercial use of user data. This app is amazing. In the messaging app, we recommend to all of our viewers. Check them out. If you care about your privacy like we do, go to freedomchat.com/redacted. You can scan that QR code on your screen. In fact, we've actually created our own channel on Freedom Chat. So when you sign up, just go to @redacted. Simply download the app, search for our channel @redacted, and subscribe. It's free to subscribe. No one can see the channels that you're subscribed to and the posts that you react to. It's your own private news feed. So a bunch of our friends in alternative media are on Freedom Chat, so you can follow us over there. freedomchat.com/redacted. Well, disgraced Washington Post reporter Taylor Lorenz has been canceled by Vox Media. I wonder if it has anything to do with her Monday's appearance on the Piers Morgan show. So things got fiery when Piers confronted Lorenz for what he called an unbelievable reaction to the murder of CEO Brian Thompson. Lorenz described the killing as bringing her joy to her life, which left Morgan and other panelists like Tommy Lahren like visibly stunned. I've watched this video like 10 times. I apologize here because this is Piers Morgan using some swear words here. But this is Piers Morgan's words, and we didn't want to edit it in any way.
And that's also the other guy is Mark Lamont Hill. Go ahead.
If you want to have a conversation about healthcare in this country, that's fine. Let's have that all day long. But to be joyful or even to say you're not empathetic about somebody losing their life when they leave behind 2 young boys, especially during the holiday season, the same day that millions of New Yorkers are celebrating a tree lighting, I mean, that's just too far for me, a bridge too far. The loving and tolerant left is at it again, Piers.
Yeah, Taylor, I don't mean to be rude, but why the fuck are you laughing all the time? I don't get it. Sorry, apologies for my language, but honestly, I find it unbelievable. What are you laughing at?
I am laughing at Tommy's insane mischaracterization of why people are angry. It has nothing to do with Occupy Wall Street. This is a feeling that people feel across the left and the right. You mentioned Ben Shapiro earlier in his video about the healthcare exec. I encourage people to check the comment section on that video, okay? 100% of America is united on this, or rather the majority of America is united on this. We do not think that this healthcare system that is murdering, again, thousands of innocent Americans who, by the way, Tommy, also have families, also have children. These people are being killed by our barbaric and evil for-profit healthcare system. And I agree, we should not necessarily go around shooting people in the street. And while I am joyful that this issue has been brought to attention,
did you hear that, Piers? Not necessarily.
It's just unbelievable.
They shouldn't be shot in the streets. They shouldn't be shot in the streets because, again, it doesn't solve the systemic problem. You could UnitedHealthcare will just appoint a new ghoulish CEO. The point is that we need to fix these systems so that, again, people like Brian or whoever's in charge of these companies stops murdering tens of thousands of innocent Americans.
Okay. I don't get it.
What he
exactly
later asks her is, what did you feel when you heard the news of his assassination? And she says, I felt joy about it. And he said, well, what's joyful about that? Would you like all healthcare CEOs to be gunned down in the streets and then you'd feel even more joy? And she has a nonsensical answer to that. So it's a lot of compassion and joy that those liberals.
Now, if you're familiar with Taylor Lorenz, this kind of garbage isn't entirely new. She built a reputation for politically charged activism reporting. In fact, Lorenz made headlines last year for targeting anonymous social media accounts at Twitter before it became X and TikTok. She claimed they were spreading disinformation, so they needed to be outed and doxxed. She wrote a piece targeting these people, even went to their houses at one point. She even doxxed these people. At the same time, she was claiming for rights for online ethics, the rights of online, the right to fight, claiming to fight for online ethics, I should say, excuse me. And then there was this amazing crying on TV moment in an interview with MSNBC. Lorenz broke down in tears over the harassment that she faced online after she doxed these people. Watch.
You feel like any little piece of information that gets out on you will be used by the worst people on the internet to destroy your life. And it's so isolating.
And terrifying.
It's horrifying. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
It's overwhelming. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the irony. The same. Yeah.
Where was her mask? She was the mask girl. She
still is the mask girl. She still very much is. In fact, just last week on Blue Sky, she said that she's trying to still plan a COVID-safe book launch in the year 2024, and people are raw dogging the air, refusing to wear masks. Raw dogging the air, like I am right now. I'm just exposing myself to air without a mask. Raw dogging the air is a new thing because she says climate change and all kinds of things prove that a mask can be useful, even though we've shown you many studies showing that a mask can be harmful. Okay. Raw dogging the air, she says. Good point, David. She's raw dogging the air right there.
Raw dogging a steak after this show, so I don't know if is that a good thing?
I don't know.
Not for her. So as for her career, we mentioned it off the top. Vox Media recently announced it would no longer distribute her podcast or her YouTube series, so she'll need to shop around and try to get a job somewhere else. People were saying that she was fired. She's responded and said no, but I said canceled, so maybe not fired, canceled, removed. Anyway, they're not distributing her podcast or YouTube anymore. So I don't know. What you want to call it, whatever you want to call it.
She's going to have to raw dog that podcast on the internet. President Biden announced a 10-year plan to revive native languages, which may last a whole 6 weeks until he's out of office. So here he is announcing this plan to revive native languages so they don't go extinct.
She's an educator. In her first trip with Secretary Haaland, she visited the language immersion program of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. Jill saw native children light up as they recited words their ancestors once spoke. Over 3/4 of the remaining native languages are in danger of being lost forever. That's why today my administration is moving ahead on a 10-year plan to revive native languages in a serious effort. It's a vision that works with tribes and support teachers, schools, communities, organizations in order to save native language from disappearing. This matters. It's part of our heritage. It's part of who we are as a nation. It's how we got to be who we are.
Okay, I'm with you. It matters. My grandfather was fluent in Hawaiian. But you have to wonder if this is worth $16.7 billion. This was something he announced on Monday at the Tribal Nations Summit. And the plan, which I linked you to the original in the newsletter this morning, if you're subscribed to our daily newsletter, it's free, redacted.inc. It's heavy on blaming the United States for forced assimilation of tribal peoples and the loss of native languages. He calls for federal funding to support schools and teachers that teach native languages. This is the plan. And again, he says that if we don't do this, we could only have 20 native languages left by the year 2050. We currently have 167. So you can see here it's make schools, support teachers, make native language technical schools and things like this. I just wonder, again, will this create any kind of commercial confusion if you have a full school, let's say, that is trained in Hawaiian, and then they have manuals in Hawaiian, and then they go out and work in the workforce, and who can they work with then, given that we do? Or is there a way to keep this as some sort of separate I'm with you. I don't want to see Hawaiian language completely go away, but is this I'm with Thomas Sowell on this, that, whenever the government does something, it's usually for the detriment of that goal. So I don't like this as a government goal. I also don't love the sort of white saviorness of it, like, oh, here I am to save these native languages. Let me know what you think. What is the economic advantage of this? Also, it will cost $1.5 billion per year. So will the Doge, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, Department of Government Efficiency say this is so not a good use of taxpayer funds, and we're not going to keep this going?
Is Pig Latin on the list? Just out of curiosity. I would like to take a course in that.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, well.
I don't think so. And you would, just let me know what you think.
Well, Tim Walz, Minnesota, Kamala Harris's buddy.
Mm-hmm. I know who he is. I'm familiar.
He praised the fact that because of all the illegal immigrants in the state, that they had certain schools, he praised the idea that they had over 40 different languages in one school. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is amazing. I'm sure it's amazing for those kids to not be able to be on the same page with anything. I'm sure it really helped their education to be 40 different languages being taught or used in that school.
Right. And who's doing it, right? And are there tribal communities that feel like they need more funding or more support in different ways from the federal government in order to keep their native tongue? Is there a way to do this that's respectful but not a steamroller to the economy that's already suffering? And most of these tribal lands, need a boost to their economy. And separating them by language is certainly not going to help them. So what is to be done? What's the economic advantage here?
So when we talk about melting pots, right? Someone in the chat says, Natalie, you're a melting pot.
Is that
what that means? I think that's a good thing.
Cool. Thanks.
Congress is holding hearings right now on all of these drones or UFOs appearing all over the United States. Congressman Smith in New Jersey just a few moments ago said that he's witnessed them as well. Went to the beach area with New Jersey residents, saw over 50 of these orbs coming out of the ocean, flying up to the sky. Like, what in the heck are these things? We can't get answers. Who knows? Why are they flying over nuclear installations? What the heck are they doing? Congress is trying to get answers as we speak. This just from just a few minutes ago on Capitol Hill. Why don't you shoot these things down? Watch.
Here. Is that something that it'd be hard to do? And then why do you need to intercept data in order to do that? If the object is there, destroy it.
So it's a good question. I think the way it works, as I understand it, and my colleagues can talk about this operationally, if you had, let's say, a football game, and you would have a perimeter, it would be declared as a temporary flight restricted area.
Okay.
So around that, you're going to have a buffer zone. You have an area where it's a no-go, and then you have a larger area around that where you might want to detect what's flying, and then you have a larger area around that where you might be tracking, but regular commercial drone use is okay. And so as they're getting closer and closer to the facility, you're detecting originally the signals to see what is that drone. You're trying to identify the drone. Oh, is that a UPS? Is that
like a long distance radar or something like that?
Exactly. So
radar
is that a UPS drone that's just delivering a package somewhere? Let it go on its way. Is it getting closer?
Is that a UPS drone? Right? Is that a UPS drone just trying to deliver a package? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe all of these drones are just holiday shoppers, and they're just delivering packages.
Dropping off FBI jackets at the FBI office.
Or something.
Are they storks? Is it that time of year? Maybe they're baby storks?
Maybe it's just UPS packages. Why can't we shoot them down? Oh, yeah, we're just going to let that one go on. Maybe that's an Amazon delivery. Maybe those are socks that you ordered on Amazon. They're showing up at your house.
I love the government morality of like, yes, we will support a genocide in another country. We will overthrow governments, but we will not get caught shooting down a drone that we don't know who it belongs to. Like, really?
They're very concerned about packages. They're very concerned about UPS packages or deliveries. Well, we finally today have our clearest photos yet of these so-called drones or UFOs over New Jersey. They don't look anything like drones, by the way. In fact, they appear to be orbs. Yes, circular orbs, which we've said on the show repeatedly. This footage was captured on Sunday night in New Jersey and finally released. Take a look at this. So this is a person, using a telephoto lens camera, and you can see here in their viewfinder what they're seeing in their viewfinder. These are circular orbs. Some sort of large circular orbs, not drones. Someone got the UFO image with his telescope. You can see from the video behind the camera. You can see this orb is surrounded by like some kind of a field as well. Another eagle-eyed observers have pointed out it's the same kind of field, by the way, that Bob Lazar described almost 30 years ago when looking at these type of craft. There's some sort of a field that surrounds these craft. And according to the poster, the field around the UFO drone looks like it's bouncing light off of it when it's being reflected. Governor of New Jersey, Murphy, was asked about this. Well, what are you doing about this? And he's like, I don't have any answers either. The governor, watch.
The drones in New Jersey, in Morris County, I don't know how many mayors sent a letter to you this morning asking for a clarification. What can you tell us? What is going on, and why is it taking so long to come up with an explanation?
Yeah, it's a good, I don't blame people for being frustrated. Let me say, most importantly, right up front, we see no evidence, and I say we, this includes Homeland Security, FBI, Secret Service, our state police, authorities at all levels of government. The most important point to say is we don't see any concern for public safety. That's number one. Number two, having said that, it's really frustrating. That we don't have more answers as to where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. We had
so you're the governor of the state. You're the governor of the state. 49 sightings last night, and
now those
and
include,
you can't. Sorry. 49 sightings over the state of New Jersey. You don't have answers from your government. You're the governor of a state. One of the most densely populated state in the United States, by the way. More people live closer in New Jersey, close to each other, than any state in the country. So there's all these eyewitness accounts of this over military bases. And we don't know. We can't get answers. No one will give you, the governor, answers of this. So now we also have eyewitness photos, crystal clear photos of these orbs also now being published. Do those look like drones to you?
No, they look like embryos.
Yeah, they look like some sort of embryo or some sort of massive, I don't know, circular orb with some sort of field around them, hovering. And this is what we're seeing now. So, again, also other eyewitnesses seeing these sort of like wheel within a wheel, like something like right out of the Bible. Look at these. This is over New Jersey. Does that look like some sort of any kind of a drone that you've ever seen before? Well, the problem is we don't know because no one's telling us. And even in front of Congress, they're not. So that even looks like biblical drawings, like a wheel within a wheel, like Ezekiel, right? I mean, you have drawings like this going back thousands of years, by the way. Some of these from the 1600s right here. These sort of wheel within a wheel in the sky. What are these things? Okay, who knows? Go ahead.
When I saw that video, the first one of the way that thing was moving, when Philip and my brother and I went camping in Oregon, we sat for like an hour and watched this star move like that. And we didn't have telephoto, but I've still got the video of it. I'm going to go back and look at it because it moved just like that. And it was, the other stars were stationary, but that one was moving and for like an hour over us. And it looks just like that.
And some of these also doing 90-degree turns in midair. So what craft does a 90-degree turn at that speed, unless it is a drone? But even that's not able to do a 90-degree turn at that speed. So anyway, Facebook group just a few minutes ago posted this, or a short time ago posted this. For those following the New Jersey Drones Facebook group that was just made a few hours ago, has almost 20,000 members sharing videos and tracking drones over New Jersey. Not only was the post that you're about to see removed from Facebook, but then it was removed from Reddit as well. They also removed it. This was the post that got removed. I can tell you right now, they are military drones. Our military. I have a commercial drone license. They know when my drone is up after it reaches 50 feet. They can assign a unique signature to it, track it on radar like a heat-seeking missile, for example, until it goes down below 50 feet again. I talked to a friend in the military who also works with these drones. He said 100% these are our drones, and they would only be used in such excess for a serious reason. And he gave examples like tracking a nuclear fallout from a dirty bomb that went off, or tracking biological weapons, tracking WMDs, or searching for them from a credible threat. This person says, I know of 2 families that left the state to stay with family elsewhere. They are both in the military. Guess what? Both of the family's husbands are deployed. That's why they are going to stay with family. Sus. So I'd like to know, anybody have family in the military that has been notified about anything like this, that is then leaving certain areas because of fear or something that you've been told? You can post it sort of, I guess, anonymously here on our chat room here if you'd like, but that post has now been removed. So what the heck is going on? Is it theatrics? Is it something else? I don't exactly know. All right, we've got more news to get to here on your Tuesday.
We're going to talk about the Supreme Court may or may not take up the case on the ban on TikTok and what that would mean if our lawmakers can literally decide, you don't get this website, you don't get this app. Is that what seems clear to me, a violation of our right to free speech? We're going to talk about it in just a second. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Buy Optimizers because it's holiday time. Are you going crazy like I am? It's a crazy stressful time of the year. That's why we want to tell you about Magnesium Breakthrough from Buy Optimizers. It isn't your average magnesium supplement, which pretty much every health expert says that magnesium is essential to your life function. But Magnesium Breakthrough contains the full spectrum of 7 proven forms of magnesium to target every system in your body. Essential for maintaining a calm, balanced mood. Also, people who are sleep deficient can have more stress responses, more fatigue. Magnesium Breakthrough helps balance your levels so you can better rest and handle the stress of the holiday madness. It is a blend of magnesium citrate, glycinate, taurate, and more, and it ensures maximum absorption into your cells. So you can try it. This is our exclusive offer for Redacted listeners by going to buyoptimizers.com/redacted, and you'll get 10% off at checkout. And if you subscribe, you'll get more amazing discounts and free gifts. So make sure that your monthly supply is guaranteed. Head on over to buyoptimizers.com/redacted and make sure you use the code redacted at checkout to get your 10% off. One more time, that's buyoptimizers.com/redacted. TikTok and its Chinese parent ByteDance have appealed to the Supreme Court to stop the United States from removing the app and the website from the United States. And in fact, a judge last week had ruled that TikTok can be removed based on legislation passed this year. And TikTok is trying to stop that so it will continue to be available in the United States to Americans. They say that the law is a violation of free speech and the Constitution, whereas U.S. lawmakers say it is a security threat for Americans. So who's right and who's wrong? Joining us to discuss is Taylor Hudak. She's an American journalist based in Europe, and she's been following this quite acutely. You can find her at _Taylor Hudak on X. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us what you know of this appeal and what is at risk here?
Yeah, so exactly as you said in your intro, just yesterday, Monday, December 9th, TikTok and ByteDance filed a motion asking for the U.S. D.C. Circuit to essentially put a pause on this law to allow for them to then appeal this to the Supreme Court. But it is unclear if the Supreme Court is going to actually hear this case. Some legal experts say that they will. Others say it's not too clear. But what happened on December 6th was a unanimous decision was handed down by a panel of 3 judges Two of them are Republicans. One of them was actually a Trump appointee, and then the third was a Democrat. They argued and ruled in favor, of course, of the U.S. government, stating that a ban on TikTok was in the interest of U.S. national security, and any concerns presented by TikTok and ByteDance that this was in the interest of free speech and the First Amendment to allow this platform to continue operating in the United States was outweighed by these national security concerns. So it's unclear right now if the platform will be operational in the United States. The platform has until January 19th, so one day before President Trump is inaugurated into office, to sell the platform to be owned by an American owner. ByteDance has said previously they don't have the means to do this and they don't intend to do this. So I think that they are really hoping that the Supreme Court will hear this case, or that President Trump himself will do something, work with Congress to potentially revoke this proposal or this bill altogether, or amend some provisions within it.
But besides a few people, such as Representative Thomas Massie, there has been a bipartisan appetite to shut down TikTok. And we passed the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications Act. And those of us who are an advocate for free speech worry that the bill allows Congress to shut down any website that it likes. And we saw what they did during the pandemic by shutting down individual voices. So what is the fear then of the type of control that we can be handing the government if the Supreme Court does not intervene?
Exactly. There are legitimate concerns here about powers that will be given to the United States government with regard to access to communication platforms in various mediums. Also, this proposal, or this law rather, grants special powers to the president to restrict apps just based on their foreign ownership. In this bill that is Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act, was initially brought before Congress just March of this year. So it was passed through the legislative process quite quickly, presented by two members of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, introduced this, one Republican, one Democrat. And interestingly, the bill was voted in favor 50-0, unanimously in favor in the House Energy Commerce Committee. So it is deeply concerning that it has been welcomed. It has received bipartisan support. However, it is also important to note that various civil liberties groups in the United States, particularly the ACLU, has from the very start been against this proposal and has been vocally advocating as well just recently for the Trump administration to please work with Congress to amend this, as I had mentioned, or to completely revoke it, because it does endanger our First Amendment rights to free speech. 170 million Americans use this app. It's a place where they express their opinions, their views, and to shut that down does seem to go against our First Amendment rights. But again, the courts are arguing that there's this national security risk. And I understand at this time that the national security concerns are under seal. And I suspect that they probably will remain under seal. So it's not really clear as to what those concerns are. There has been mention about how it's dangerous, it's risky for the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party to have access to Americans' data. But let's be clear here, which is that US platforms like Facebook, Instagram, X as well, often get access to Americans' data as well. So the US government has our data. We don't have a GDPR or any sort of data protection laws in the United States. So this concern seems a little bit questionable. Many have wondered if the real reason for shutting down this platform is that data protection concern, because it's important for the viewers to also remember that this bill was quickly passed through the legislative process in the House and in the Senate in the spring of this year, around April and May, March, April, May. It was passed through quite quickly at around the same time that many university students were protesting Israel's war in Gaza. And at the same time, there was many reports coming out in the media from Al Jazeera, Rolling Stone, MSNBC, NBC, stating that many U.S. lawmakers were concerned that younger people were getting radicalized by being exposed to differing views on Middle Eastern geopolitics, as well as U.S. foreign policy on the TikTok app. So that's also a possibility that they're concerned about this shaping people's political views.
Right. But if we're sort of categorizing lawmakers, we know that Thomas Massie does not take money from Israeli lobbies,
right,
and every other member of Congress that does supports this bill. So that's an interesting overlap of interests, I would say. Also, again, what you say is that the proof that China could spy on us is under seal, so we don't know. So what makes me nervous about this is a couple of things. All the things the government has done without ever proving things to us, such as, I don't know, Iranian nuclear weapons, or yes, spying on us. Also, I know from Edward Snowden's book that we spy on China quite regularly. That was the thing. That was the linchpin for him to decide to expose government spying on Americans. And so I'm concerned about this burden of proof and how we can be sold things in this Trojan horse that they never have to prove, and that both parties support it. What do you think an incoming Trump administration's attitude is about this?
Well, the Trump administration, or at least the first Trump administration, initially put forward an executive order to completely ban TikTok. That was rejected. And then Trump has recently changed his perspective on this. In September, he posted a video stating that if you want TikTok to remain operational in the United States and have access to it as a U.S. citizen in America, you should vote for me because I will not allow for the platform to be banned. So hopefully he will stick to his word. It's unclear exactly what he could do. It's been reported that he could encourage his Justice Department to not implement the law, or at least not hold accountable the app stores if they were to continue to allow people to access the platform and download it. However, when these app stores like Google and Apple are facing very hefty fines, it doesn't seem that they are going to want to take that risk, just being promised that they perhaps won't face those fines or be prosecuted for not complying with this law. So again, the Trump administration could potentially work with Congress, or of course the Supreme Court, as I had mentioned, can go ahead and hear this case and rule or overturn that U.S. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals ruling. That's what could happen at this point. Or they could, of course, look at this unanimous decision that was issued on December 6th and find that the court ruled appropriately. We'll see. Mm-hmm. It speaks to a broader trend in America in which the United States is tightening its grip on the information space, whether that be with regard to sanctioning foreign-owned media companies, going after the employees who work for those media companies, and also expanding their reach as far as their imperial ambitions into the information space. We know that, in fact, the State Department had put pressure on, say, India, for example, to sanction Russian media and revoke RT journalists in India, revoke their journalist accreditation. So it shows a broader trend, as I had mentioned, of seeking to restrict and control the global information space.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So what do you think would happen? Because Americans do love TikTok. And if it suddenly goes dark on our app store and we cannot access TikToks on the internet, what do you think Americans would do? Would they just switch over to Instagram? What would that be like, do you think? Have you thought it through?
I think young people are going to be very upset. When news of this law first came to the public's attention, young people were, Gen Z were calling various Congress members and encouraging them not to support this proposal or support any bans on TikTok. So I see perhaps many protests, a large outcry against this. I do think the lawmakers who put forward this proposal are going to be quite unpopular if they are not already. I also think Trump has an opportunity to start his administration off on a really good foot, let's say, by making some bold moves with regard to this law, doing the best that he can to ensure that TikTok isn't banned in the United States, because this will, of course, open the door for other platforms that are owned by so-called foreign adversaries to be shut down. So I do see young people getting quite angry and upset about this. And as I mentioned, we may see protests, calls to Congress, and more political action, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a really It's risky. It's really risky at a time when we need our freedoms. So thank you for this context. You can follow Taylor at _Taylor Hudak on X. And she's one of the most, I want to say, complete thinkers on this subject. So follow along her reporting. Thanks for coming on Redacted. You're welcome back anytime if you have time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Taylor. And
all right. I see some comments here that are like, TikTok's trash. We don't need it. Not the point. You guys, it's about our ability to choose the way we communicate for ourselves and not hand that over to the government. So, yeah, I'm not a big user of TikTok.
I don't use TikTok.
I don't care. But I do not want the government to have the power to remove it.
Congressman Thomas Massie has been outspoken against this, right? He absolutely says it's clear where this was not about China. This was about Israel, of course. Congressman Massie is going to join us here on the show tomorrow to talk about that and more. But yeah, you mentioned RT. Go ahead. No one in the United States was watching RT, by the way. Like the data, according to Lee Smith, investigative journalist, is like, I think like 0.01% of like all cable news viewership was like watching RT in the United States, Russia Today. So Americans weren't being brainwashed by Russia. No one was watching it. But don't you have a choice to watch it in the United States of America, right, David? I mean, that's the point at the heart of it.
Yeah.
For a long time, it was on the cable networks. Like you could go to on Comcast and you had RT as a choice. But until all this stuff happened, then all of a sudden, we can't see that anymore.
Yeah, we didn't have it in Europe. We couldn't get to RT.com. The European government had removed that as well. So we had to use a VPN when we lived there. Europe, they don't litigate to take away freedoms. They just take them.
They just take them.
Yeah. So
in Europe, they just tell you can't use cash anymore. All right. 500 euros is the limit, or 800 euros is the limit in cash. Otherwise, if you go above that, you're considered on the gray market. You're considered a terrorist. Like they'll just take away your freedoms, you know? So all these liberals who are like hemming and hawing about like moving to Canada, moving to Europe for more freedoms or whatever.
Yeah. Go ahead. And you'll see surprised. A 50% tax rate and tell me how free you feel there. I speak from experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We got more news. So this bombshell story coming up, you guys are not going to want to miss this. And I hope that you will please share this story far and wide, because this is a bombshell story about the Biden administration's corruption, the use of children in the United States, and the massive child trafficking operation that is coming out of Guatemala and being facilitated at the highest levels of the Biden administration. We're going to break that story wide open for you here in a moment. But first, we talk a lot about how the left would rather censor the truth than address real issues. Just look at the Democratic Representative Seth Moulton. Moulton expressed his concerns about his daughters competing against trans athletes and called out Democrats for prioritizing political correctness over talking about issues that Americans actually care about. Unsurprisingly, the establishment media wasted no time in attacking him. Massachusetts Live said, which of course is owned by a giant media conglomerate, ran this headline saying, "Facing a furor, Moulton tries to explain remarks on trans athletes." Billionaire-owned MSNBC accused him of throwing trans Americans under the bus. Meanwhile, headlines from conservative outlets are praising his courage for raising these issues. You can see this. Seth Moulton speaks the truth. Democrats change tune on transgender athletes. If you watch our show, you know we're all about exposing this sort of media bias and hypocrisy. That's why we love using Ground News, which is today's sponsor, to uncover stories like this. Now, Ground News shows you every headline on a story and how coverage changes based on the political bias or the corporate funding. It also helps you cut through the mainstream narratives and find out more trustworthy independent sources. Plus, you can spot stories the big outlets are outright ignoring. So check them out today. There's a QR code on your screen. You can download it and try it, and you get 50% off their unlimited access plan. And just go to the website ground.news/redacted. That's ground.news/redacted. Well, did you know that Guatemala is the child kidnapping capital of the world? That's why the Biden administration is so interested in this country. Antony Blinken and the U.S. State Department have been caught red-handed in a regime change operation that involves blackmail, extortion, money laundering, rigged elections, and, of course, this massive child trafficking operation. Yes, your United States State Department and the HHS. Just think about it like in terms of Ukraine and Burisma, Hunter Biden version 2.0 is what we're seeing right now in Guatemala. Our next guest is breaking this story wide open. right now on Redacted. Ryan Mata is an investigative journalist who joins us now. Ryan has been on the story, tracking where all of these children have been trafficked around the world, of course, and his documentaries on this are second to none. And we want to welcome Ryan back to the show. Ryan, great to see you.
Clayton, it's an honor to be here, man. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else right now to break this story. So thank you for having me here.
Well, my pleasure. When you brought me this story about a week ago, I couldn't believe it. So why don't you just give us, our audience a sense of what's happening here? Antony Blinken at the center of this, Guatemala, the largest and the child trafficking capital of the world. And we think about so many of these children that wind up in the United States, but it's all being facilitated at the highest levels of the Biden administration. So that's sort of the context here, but I'll let you run with it.
Yeah, Clayton. So my documentary released a couple of weeks ago, and right after it released, I had got it translated into Spanish. And the second that it posted in Spanish, 24 hours later, I was contacted by the Attorney General's office of Guatemala. They had asked if I could come to Guatemala and speak to their team. They had a lot of stuff that they wanted to tell me about what was going on over here in America, and then specifically the missing children from Guatemala. So I told them that I couldn't come down till January 20th. The next night I have a Twitter space, and about 5 citizens from Guatemala show up, and they start begging me to come to Guatemala. And they tell me that 20 children yesterday alone were kidnapped. So I said, wait, you had what? They said, yeah, 20 Amber Alerts went out yesterday alone. 20 children are being kidnapped from our country almost every single day. And that's just what's getting reported. So then I started to dig into the numbers and how many specifically. I knew that 60 to 70% of these children were coming from 3 countries, Guatemala, Ecuador, and El Salvador. But I didn't understand how many specifically were coming from Guatemala. So I started to dig into it, and I uncovered that out of that 438,000 that I presented in the documentary, we had talked about several times on your show, out of that, 42 to 48% are coming from Guatemala. So to give your audience an idea, that's 212,940 children since the Biden administration has taken office have been kidnapped or trafficked out of Guatemala and arrived at the United States border without a parent. To put that into context, their population is 18 million, Clayton. So roughly 1 to 2% of their population has been kidnapped and trafficked into America. So that's kind of the pretext on what got me invited to Guatemala.
So this isn't, and this isn't just coincidence. This is to have that kind of scale of an operation. I think that's what most Americans just can't wrap their head around. That Alejandro Mayorkas, Antony Blinken, they have facilitated this invasion and the trafficking of these children. So when I see how people were crying in their Cheerios about Kamala Harris losing this election, I just can't wrap my head around. You don't understand the level of sophistication, the size and scale of this child sex trafficking operation that's been run by the Biden administration, right? So this would have to be, to your mind, like a military scale operation to get these many children out of Guatemala and into the United States, no?
100%, Clayton. Absolutely. There's no possible way to move that many bodies, let alone children, out of a country, through a border, through another country, and into America if you didn't have a well-oiled, dialed-in machine where you had compromised government officials on every level along the way.
So we talked about blackmail, money laundering, extortion, rigged elections, massive child trafficking operation here in the introduction here. So you went to Guatemala. What did you uncover? And I know you're just peeling this onion back, but what can you share with us now?
Yeah, Clayton. So I went there thinking I'm going to investigate child trafficking. And I was handed what I think is a story that honestly might get me killed. I think I'm in a little bit over my head because every single person who's ever tried to expose things like this before normally ends up, Epstein, if you will. So I don't fully understand it, but I'm going to break down what was presented to me. So about 8 years ago, because in Guatemala, they have their government is kind of similar to ours. So they have executive, they have the legislative, and they have the judicial branch. Each branch is supposed to be separate from the other. So there's kind of a checks and balances. Now, the Attorney General's office overlaps the president's office by a 2-year term. So the Attorney General is actually picked from the previous president. So 8 years ago, our government has never really been able to basically install a president and an attorney general at the same time. They've always kind of overlapped. Luckily for Guatemala, that is. But about 8 years ago, they had a very conservative president. They were able to install this AG. So because of our State Department had put pressure on their government to change their laws, they wanted to make it illegal for the president to basically remove this attorney general from office. So that was 8 years ago. So fast forward to today. Guatemala just had election in 2023. their election was fraudulent. I was presented with enough evidence for me to actually review it, to see how their laws work and operate, and go, yes, without a shadow of a doubt, I would say that I can view enough fraud for the authorities to investigate this fraud. So that's what happened. Their government, their citizens have to present evidence to their attorney general. There was over 1,000 complaints of election fraud. The attorney general started to investigate, review all of these complaints, and she can't actually open an investigation into the Electoral College. She has to present the information to Congress, and Congress has to vote on it. So she now goes and presents this information and says, hey, there's enough evidence here for election fraud. Can I open this investigation? The Congress had to vote on it. They have 160 members of Congress. Out of the 160, 108 of them said, yes, there's enough evidence here. We should investigate this election fraud. So she began the investigation. After that, Anthony Blinken goes to their government and demands that he remove all of their visas. So the 100 politicians that voted to actually just investigate this election fraud, Blinken has since suspended their visas. And then he went a step further and he suspended 400 visas that belong to their family, relatives, and friends to put pressure on their government to basically fire this attorney general, because the attorney general is the only one, her office is the only office that actually has the ability to investigate the election fraud.
So that this is very similar, like to Hunter Biden in Ukraine, right? And so you have the vice president of the United States, Joe Biden, who puts pressure then on the Ukrainian government and has the top prosecutor who's looking into these connections at Burisma and with Hunter Biden and John Kerry's stepson, I believe, and has him fired, thrown out, and those documents essentially destroyed. So it's basically the same thing here.
100%, Clayton, and it gets worse. So since then, their government has been, their attorney general's office has been trying to contact government offices in America. For example, directly writing letters to Chris Wray of the FBI, directly writing letters to Secretary Blinken, directly writing letters to the House Oversight Committee. Nothing, not one. Then fast forward to April of 2024. So this has been going on. Our State Department has constantly been putting pressure on the Guatemalan government. They have also been using previous ambassadors and high-profile players in America to do media hits on CNN and on all these woke news outlets, trying to put pressure and saying that Guatemalan attorney general is corrupt. They're saying all these accusations without any proof. So part of the investigation is their attorney general's office trying to contact our government and saying, hey, you have government officials here in America that are making these claims about our attorney general. We would like to see the evidence that you have to support those claims, because if not, that's defamation, and that's technically illegal in Guatemala. So why is our ambassador to Guatemala slandering our attorney general without any evidence to back that up? So then in April 27th, I believe was the exact date, the attorney general has enough evidence to raid the foundation Save the Children. So Save the Children has been raided in Guatemala for trafficking children. 10 days after this, Clayton, 10 days after the attorney general raids the foundation Save the Children, Senator Blinken, not on a planned trip, makes a surprise trip to Guatemala, sits down with their government, full press conference, holds a press conference saying that they need to investigate this attorney general, that she is corrupt.
So Secretary of State Blinken, 10 days after they raid this NGO, it's an NGO that's facilitating the trafficking of children into the United States, labels her corrupt and wants an investigation. What happened? Do we know what happened with the investigation into Save the Children? What was she about to uncover?
The investigation, luckily, is still ongoing, Clayton. And because it is an ongoing investigation, it's similar here to in America, where they can't talk about an open or ongoing investigation. But from what I've been told by citizens and other people that can actually talk about it and aren't restricted, that it's a really big deal. And the evidence is damning. And they've went as far as writing letters to Ken Paxton. They've wrote letters to the House Oversight Committee, and all of them have gone unanswered, Clayton. So we're talking about 212,000 missing children, and the investigative agencies in Guatemala are contacting our agencies here in America saying, hey, where are these children? And they can't get a word. But Robbie Starbuck did an amazing investigation into this very specific topic as soon as it happened. And in his investigation, you want to know what he uncovered, Clayton? Guess who sits on the board of directors or sat on the board of directors of Save the Children?
I was going to say Alejandro Mayorkas because he has his hands on all of these NGOs, but no, is that not Mayorkas? Somebody else?
What about Jill Biden?
Jill or Joe?
Jill, Jill. Jill Biden is sitting or sat on the board of directors of an NGO that was just raided in Guatemala for trafficking children. 10 days later, Blinken flies down there and demands that the only person that can investigate this crime gets fired for corruption without any evidence or any proof to back up those accusations.
Let me turn to the influence that is going on in Guatemala. You were recently there, and just before your visit, members of the Guatemalan Congress were threatened by our embassy there that they would lose their U.S. visas, and their kids who are studying here would lose their visas to study in America if they didn't support removal of Guatemala's Attorney General. Do you think the United States should be manipulating members of a foreign Congress in this manner?
Not a question of manipulating members of foreign Congress. It's the fact that in the recent election in Guatemala, there was a very strong attempt made to prevent the democratically elected president of Guatemala from taking office. There was an attempt to disrupt the inauguration of that president. And if we stand for democracy anywhere, we have to stand for it everywhere, including in Guatemala.
So is the State Department's opposition to the Attorney General at all related to her recent investigations to determine if the Biden administration's complicit in the trafficking of children into the United States? Nothing to do with that? Correlation, not causation?
That is absurd.
Good to hear.
Where do things stand now, and what's going to happen to this Attorney General?
In 2 weeks, Clayton, because they had the election where they also installed this new president, and they also had members of that, those 100 that I told you that voted to investigate it. Some of them are no longer there, and they've been replaced. Now, since then, the party that actually got this politician elected is called, I think it's like the Somali Party, kind of like we have the Democrats, Republicans, Independents here. The party that was created in 2019 that this president is a part of, well, they also had an investigation into how that party was created. That party was created with fraudulent signatures. So the party that president is a part of and every member of Congress that he was actually elected with, it's all illegitimate. And that's actually official as of November 27th. So like last week or 2 weeks ago, that party is no longer a political party, which should then nullify this election. And all of these politicians that are a part of that party should be suspended, and they should have new elections that are taking place. So there's a big investigation that's going on. But in 2 weeks, they're voting to change the law to give this president the power to remove that attorney general. If that happens, this investigation into all of these missing children in Guatemala will be crushed. The investigation into all the election fraud will be crushed. And our United States government will have completed the regime change in Guatemala. Since they had these elections, the Guatemalan new Congress has already voted to give themselves a 343% raise. So they've increased all of their salaries by 300 or 400% almost already. And you can see if this happens and this attorney general is removed, the regime change will be complete, and we'll most likely see exactly what we saw in Nicaragua, exactly what we've seen in Venezuela, probably what we're seeing in Somalia or Syria right now. Our government is rotted to the core. And this is a regime change that's taking place in Guatemala. And if President Trump doesn't speak up and say something, and we allow this attorney general to be removed from power, it's not going to be good for Guatemala. It's definitely not going to be good for the United States.
And it's not going to be good for these children that are now missing.
No. Oh, man.
And this operation in the United States. Well, Ryan, I know this is just the start of this story, and I want to thank you for being so brave on this and your work on this. And we're going to start to peel the layers of this back more deeply here on the show. So I wanted to thank you for bringing at least the first part of this story to us here. And we'll be tracking it. Has there been any response from the Biden administration on this?
Zero. Outside of putting pressure on the attorney general, zero. Not just from the Biden administration, from Chris Wray, from James Comer and the Oversight Committee, from Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton, I mean, there's Southwest Key there's Save the Children NGOs operating in Texas that are directly connected to the Save the Children NGO in Guatemala. So their government is saying, hey, we want to know, are our Guatemalan children in this NGO that's operating in your state, Ken Paxton? And they've received no word. Now, Ken, they feel like that he's been under attack as well. So they understand that maybe his office is very busy and he's dealing with a lot, so he hasn't been able to get back to them. But Chris Wray, Blinken, they've contacted Janet Yellen because she's part of the Treasury and they want to know about money laundering that's going on in Guatemala. No response, no response, no response. So if we can get the word to Trump's administration, Senator Mark Rubio is over there on CNN running his mouth about how this attorney general is corrupt. So we have people that may or may not be going into this new Trump administration that if given the opportunity to undermine this investigation, it sounds like they're going to undermine this investigation.
Yeah, well, we've been very concerned about little Marco Rubio for sure. Well, thank you for this, Ryan. Thank you for your bravery in this. And again, we'll continue to follow it. And anything you want us to share, we will do that here on the show to try to save these children. Not unlike the fake name of an organization that actually traffics children, but labels itself as saving children. Ryan, thank you so much.
God bless, Clayton. Thank you.
And thanks so much, Ryan. And, it's just so incredibly disheartening that the mainstream media totally ignores the child trafficking story. Only because President Trump mentioned the missing 300,000 children, and then you have Kamala Harris laughing at him about it as if it's a funny joke. That's really the only attention we've gotten. So we're going to continue to stay on this story and focus on these children here on this show. I know that the censors don't like us talking about it. Anytime we talk about it, they ban us, or not ban us, but they definitely suppress the story. Or they put, like demonetize the story. It's amazing. Like, I wish these tech companies had balls, like this is one of the most important stories to my mind, that the United States is the largest facilitator of child trafficking in the world under the Biden administration. Why is this not getting more attention? Because all of these billionaires, all of these people with money who are taking part of it, who are a part of this operation, it's their dirty little secret, right? So anyway, our thanks to Ryan for that. Thank you guys so much for being a part of our show here. Hey, we have a daily newsletter. I'd love for you to subscribe to our newsletter before we get out of here today. Just go to redacted.inc is the place to go. Sign up. We publish it every day, so it should be in your inbox first thing, kind of in the morning or kind of close to lunchtime or whenever. Depends on your time zone, I guess. But you just sign up, and then you'll receive a welcome email from me, just Clayton at redacted.inc. You need to make sure that you click on that and say you want to put that in your inbox. Otherwise, I think Gmail labels us as dangerous. They move it over to the dangerous folder. So when you sign up, redacted.inc, you'll get a welcome email. You have to click confirm that, yes, you do, in fact, want to receive the newsletter. And then tomorrow morning, you'll receive the newsletter on Wednesday morning, first thing in your inbox. So thank you guys so much for being a part of our show. We really, really appreciate it here as we head into the end of the year. Much love to all of you guys. We'll be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time live. Hope you have a great night, everyone.